This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organizations, but providing such information is voluntary. Citizens participating in person wishing to speak should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand in Zoom or submit a public speaker card, and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you, Emily. Can you please conduct roll call?
Member Armijo,
Present.
Member Boardman,
Here.
Member Chen,
Here.
Member Conradi,
Here.
Member Diaz,
Here.
Member Fahey,
Here.
Member Golier,
Golier, present.
Golier. Member Greenblatt,
Here.
Member McLean,
Here.
Member Smith,
Here.
Member Stamps,
Here.
Member Wirtz,
Here.
Vice Chair Pillai,
Here.
Chair Weeks.
Here.
All right, we do have a quorum with members Doe, Levine, Labau, Nelson, Ortiz, and Panganiban absent, and Rouhani.
Okay, thank you. So we will proceed. The first item on the agenda is public comment.
We do not have any public comments.
Okay, so I will not make that speech. Do we have any written or remote public comments? I guess not.
We do not.
Okay, that concludes our public comment item. We are now moving on to the consent calendar. Are there any changes or comments from the committee, or does anyone want to pull an item from the consent calendar at this time? Okay, great. Emily, do we have any written or have we received any public comment?
We have not.
Okay. Well, if anyone from the public would like to speak, please submit a public speaker card or raise your virtual hand, and staff or I will call upon you. Okay, so does anybody want to make a motion to approve the consent calendar at this time?
So moved.
How about a second?
Second.
Okay. I didn't hear who said so moved. Smith? Member Smith?
Yep.
Okay, and Member Boardman second. Okay. Emily, please conduct a roll call vote at this time.
Member Armijo,
Yes.
Member Boardman,
Yes.
Member Chen,
Yes.
Member Conrad,
Yes. Yes.
Member Fahey,
Yes.
Member, I'm going to say it wrong again, I apologize.
Golier?
Golier.
Yes.
Member Greenblatt,
Yes.
Member McLean,
Yes.
Member Smith,
Yes.
Member Stamps,
Yes.
Member Wirtz,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pillai,
Yes.
Chair Weeks.
Yes.
All right, motion passes unanimously with members Doe, Levine, Labau, Nelson, Ortiz, Panganiban, and Rouhani absent.
Okay, thank you for that. We are now moving on to our regular agenda items. The first item is informational. We will be presented by Jay Zhang to provide an update on upcoming obligation deadlines. Jay.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. Welcome to the first meeting of 2025. Hope everyone had a good holiday. So I'm here to present the project monitoring effort that staff have been conducting. So this is the informational item. No action is required from the committee. So first up, we have projects that's funded by STIP, As you can see, because the way STIP is programmed, we still have a lot of time on most of these projects until sponsored deadlines. However, I just want to mention that staff has been working with local jurisdictions as well as MTC staff to file a 2024 STIP amendment request at the next CDC meeting to reprogram some of these funds for various reasons, scope changes, funding delays, and things like that. So I'll continue to update the board on that process. And then additionally, CCTA staff has also been working on the 2026 STIP call for projects, and that item will come to this committee sometime possibly in March or April. So again, I'll update the committee on that process. And then moving on to OBAG, federally funded projects. I'm glad to report that City of San Pablo was able to submit the construction RFA in December. So that really concludes all of the projects that we have in fiscal year 22, 23, and 24. So as we look ahead in fiscal year 25 and 26, these are the projects that's currently programmed, and some of the important deadline dates are listed. So I just want to ask everyone to be aware of upcoming deadlines and work with local assistance if needed. Oh, and also MTC has been developing the fourth round of OBAG, and they will be reaching out to cities for engagement. And then the call for projects for the next round would be sometime in 2026. So I'll continue to monitor that item and bring it to the committee as needed. And then moving on to ATP projects, some of the projects highlighted in red, there's a deadline approaching. So the CTC process usually take a couple months. So I just want everyone to be aware of that and start working on that if you have a deadline coming up. And then last but not least is the inactive projects on the FHWA's inactive project list. This is look a little different than what's in your packet because there's a new update between when the packets were due in the meeting. So this is the latest that Caltrans provided on January 6th. So Emily will help distribute the new list to members after the meeting. So if you have a project on the list, please work with Caltrans local assistants to submit invoices to make sure your funding is not in jeopardy. And with that, I conclude my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jay. Are there any comments from the committee at this time? Okay. Looks like we'll go forward. If anyone would like to speak from the public, please submit a speaker card or raise your virtual hand, and staff or I will call upon you. Emily, do we have any written remote public comments?
We do not have any public comments.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and move on to the next item then. The next item is informational and will be presented by Ying Smith to seek input on the ITP.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. Good to see so many of you here at the first meeting of 2025. Thank you for the time to hear staff give you update on the integrated transit plan, and we also would like to seek your input on the action plan recommendations as well, especially the ones that really affect your jurisdiction. Let me. I did a share screen. I don't think I shared screen yet. Oh. Okay, just give a second. So I know this is the first time I came here to give you an update on the integrated transit plan. So I want to just spend a few minutes at the beginning to give you the background of the ITP. So the ITP was actually first identified in the expenditure plan, and it calls for CCTA's transit first vision. We engaged the transit operators, the 4 bus operators, AC Transit, WestCat, County Connection, as well as Tri-Delta Transit, all the way back in 2021 to develop the scope. So the bigger regional background is that in addition to the challenges we have in our county in transit services, there's a lot of effort at the regional level, mostly led by MTC. Several years back, the Blue Ribbon Task Force, the Fare Integration Study, as well as the regional network management effort. So under this bigger background, plus the challenges with the transit services as well as funding, especially post-COVID. That's how the ITP was conceptualized. This was with support of the, MTC with a grant, as well as the bus transit operators. So collectively, MTC and the 4 operators plus CTTA contribute funding, plus CTTA was able to get the TERCEP grant to support this project. So this is really a partnership among all the agencies to develop this plan. So today we'll provide the input, and then we'll dive into the transit priority corridors, access improvement zones, as well as the mobility hubs. So that's what we talk about. ITP is guided by this vision statement to really focus on transit first vision, focus on coordination and innovation. Equity is a piece that kind of throughout the theme of the plan. Just share with you, we started the study in April 2023. And at this point, we have some major deliverables in front of our transit partners as well as our boards for your review. We can divide them up into the 3 bigger categories. One is the action plan, which is how we envision transit services in the future and what kind of service level we're looking at. Policy input recommendations includes not only the policies affects transit, but policies affects land use and parking, which is the demand side of the equation. The capital improvement piece is the improvements we need to support this higher level of transit services. So this is probably the focus of today is the action plan and how we land to the capital improvements. And just want to step back a little bit on how the ITP's recommendation affects the project development life cycle. We can see that ITP is really the first step in identifying the capital improvements. And that's not the end of it, it's really the beginning. As CCTA complete the ITP, that's when we start to look at funding and project development. The funding we're talking about is really beyond the current funding sources. We're looking at the regional measure that MTC is leading, as well as the locals, our CCTA's Measure J renewal in the not too far into the future. Those local or regional funding sources will be used as a leverage to help support bigger grant opportunities. So all the recommendations you see today is not like we're several steps away from getting the projects done to go through the alternative analysis, project design and environmental clearance, final design, and eventually go to construction. So I just want to set that concept, and I know many of you are involved in your agency's capital projects, so this is probably not anything new to you. So just want to send to you the look at where we are. As I mentioned, we are at the tail end of developing the action plan and policy recommendations. We are, like the team is currently busy with the capital improvements, and we think this is a really good spot to talk to all of you because we have in the last about 1.5 years, we have regular meetings with our transit partners. But this is really the first time to talk to you, all the, in addition to the transit partners, the city, well, you are the ones, you're the owner operator of your street network. Our goal is to complete the plan this year, and we have our targets July this year. So in the next few slides, we do want to talk about the two major groups of recommendations. One is the transit priority corridors, so look at them as the lines on the map, right? And the other category is the access improvement zone, so there's more about the zones, the dots on the map. So the ITP, working through with our transit partners, will identify 9 transit priority corridors and additional frequent bus corridors. Just put in some concept what we mean by transit priority corridors, what kind of improvements we're looking at. First is the frequency of the bus service. We're looking at the 50-minute network. That's really the gold standard during for many bus services. Some locations, the frequent bus network, we're looking at more like a 20-minute network. And along that line, we're looking at the improvements at the bus stops, the islands, bus mobiles, and then the third is the passenger amenities, shelters, benches, real-time information, plus wayfinding. The 4 categories are very pretty effective improvement to really improve transit services, the travel time, the travel speed, is the signal priorities. We're talking about prioritizing transit, which it does have benefits of helping address congestion issues for not only transit but for cars. The 5th category is bus lanes on arterials. Those are dedicated bus lanes, either in several different forms. The 6th one, those are the improvements on freeways. Part-time transit lane, also known as bus on shoulders, or express lanes that are open to transit vehicles as well as private automobiles. The 7th category is more customer-facing. It's about the branding on buses and stations. And then the example, we actually use the AC Transit Tempo as one of the really good close-to-home example here. And in addition is the access to transit bus stops, walking, biking access, and safety improvements. So we just want to share with you the kind of what we have in mind when we talk about transit priority corridors. Here, this is more of interest of the transit operators, the service level, service span. So now we move to the kind of the dots on the map, right? Then we talk about access improvement zones. Our passengers do need to get to those locations. So we talk about how we connect to the core transit network. The typical rail and bus, the transit priority corridors being more capital heavy, like improvements, and the frequent bus network could be put a minimum just to improve in frequency. We also look at some technology innovation, and on the emerging mobility nodes, we'll talk about how to connect to the future, in this case, the advanced air mobility model. We're talking about the public transit connection to those locations, not the mode itself. So just want to clarify that. Here, we use the proposed TPC, transit priority corridors, and put the locations of those improvement zones. Those are key nodes, for example, BART stations and existing transit centers, as well as future transit centers. And the improvements to the zones include, we call them mobility hubs or shared mobility hubs, and the connections include microtransit, like in the case of Tri-Delta Transit's Try My Ride. That's a really good example of microtransit, and other feeder services. CCTA is also developing the automated transit network, or dynamic, dynamic personal transit network. In addition, we're also looking at local bus as well as active transportation connections. So I want to go a little bit more into the topologies of the shared mobility hubs. we divided into 3 categories. And many of them are consistent with MTC's shared mobility hub topology, and also consistent with CCTA's Innovate 680 topology. There are basically 3 categories by the kind of the significance of those locations. There's quite a bit of details on how the improvements we recommend. Basically, the bigger, more significant those hubs are, the more amenities and investment we envision. For example, in the regional transfer hubs, for example, BART stations, we're looking at quite a bit of transit amenities with the bus bays to allow sufficient space to allow the transfer. And we also look at recommend the bus and bicycle and pedestrian amenities. Also have the space for other microtransit and other kind of feeder services to enter the hubs to really connect people to the regional network. And the regional access hubs is like one step down, as you can see, is lesser on the investment, but still very robust. Community hubs, it will be something that you will get on major bus network, not necessarily a regional system. And for example, parking is optional, and probably if there's existing parking, we want to either improve it or reactivate the space for more active modes. The locations there's no parking, and that will really emphasize the bus connection as well as the biking, walking connections. So here's the map showing kind of overview. It's pretty ambitious, with so many locations we identify, and again, that goes into the future project development process in the prioritization. The ITP will include some kind of evaluation and prioritization, but when it comes to project development stage, that's also depends on local agencies and interests in their priority list, as well as the grant opportunities. Just want to share with you here the next steps to finish the ITP. As I mentioned, we are in the middle of the capital project development. We're looking for input from all of you, as well as going back to the transit agencies to further really refine the recommendations and look at project evaluation and prioritization. We are going to prepare the kind of order of magnitude cost estimate that helps us to prioritize the projects. This is not the only time I'm here. I will come back a few more times, as well as go to our Citizen Advisory Committee. We're preparing for a May CCA board workshop, and that's when we provide most of the recommendations to you. And as I mentioned, there will be final plan for adoption in July. I just want to say one more thing about our engagement with all of you. In addition to this TCC setup, right, we would like to have individual meetings with the cities. I know the impact on each city can be different, so it really depends on your interest. The project team is available to meet with you for your individual specific input if that works better. So that concludes the staff presentation. I do have our consultant, project manager, Kate Sargent from TY Lin. She's also on Zoom to be able to answer your questions.
Thank you, Ying. And thank you for having someone online to answer the questions. Appreciate that. If anyone would, well, let's see. Are there any comments from the committee at this time? Anybody would like to start us off? I'm sure there's questions. Can't believe it. There's got to be one.
Of
Member
course, I
Greenblatt.
have questions. Thank you for the presentation. I guess I'm looking to see like an actual document to read. I found, like, I've reviewed the slides, but I can't zoom in and see what's happening in West County, for example, based on the information provided. So is there written documentation about what the proposed policies are, or like more detailed maps, because I was looking at the maps and I couldn't figure out, and again, I'm just thinking of West County, but I couldn't identify what the routes were, what the corridors were, where these stations were. So it's kind of hard to give substantive feedback without that information.
Yeah, so I forgot to mention, we actually have a ITP webpage on the CCTA website, and then that's where we have detailed maps. We have first the data analysis, the task 1 report. The rest of them, we haven't like got to the point to finalize it, so we don't have the final document. Is on the detailed maps available on our website. And then also that's where we think, because our county is quite big, right? It's like we don't have zoom in map in today's presentation or the materials. We think that kind of detail will show up better when we talk to the cities individually. But yeah, we're happy to provide that kind of detail too, especially the zoom in for West County.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing as you go forward and present this, to let people know where to find that information, because I didn't know there was that website.
Right, sorry, yeah, that's something we should have put on the presentation, that we do have a website to have all the publicly available information available there.
So I'm happy to hear, I have a couple comments, so that's okay.
Go ahead.
I'm happy to hear that you're planning to go and meet with the individual cities. I think that's helpful, but I think it's also important to use our RTPC tax and boards, because that gives a forum to discuss cross-jurisdictional issues. And I think, transit runs across jurisdictions, and when, I think it's a good opportunity to use the structure that the CCTA has. It might make your job a little bit easier to gather information, because our members are used to coming to our TAC and discussing this type of thing.
Yeah, I really appreciate that comment. The reason why we would like to see your interest is, for example, we have the TPC, Trans-Priority Corridor along 680. The improvement is on the freeway, right? So, for example, City of San Ramon, sorry, Chris, I have to pick on you. You may not have a more direct impact, because the recommendations we have for the capital program is on the freeway. So your interest could be different from the improvements that we recommend along in the cities of Walnut Creek and Concord. So that's why we would like to really give you this kind of broad stroke presentation at this committee, and then generate some interest. Because if we only talk about transit improvements, really our counterparts are our transit agencies. But when we talk about capital improvements on the local streets, that's when the cities may be more interested in it. While if we're talking about improvements on the freeway, we actually do need to talk to Caltrans. In this case, since I-680 is one of our projects already. So that's why we totally can go. West County is actually very different from the other 3 subregions, and I appreciate that. But I think here I really want to kind of start the conversation and hear your interest. And I think sometimes the cities may really want to look at our recommendation on specific streets, and that's when that one-on-one meeting may be more helpful.
And I'm saying that not only do I like that you're meeting with the cities, but I think you also definitely need to be meeting with the RTPC tax and our boards, because they're looking at things holistically. And I think when we meet individually, sometimes things get left out, which I can give you examples of if you'd like. But the other thing, a question I had, and it is, there's a lot here about sort of connections to major attractions, and I can't remember quite the wording, but I'm wondering about local service and service for the transit-dependent population. What aspects of the plan look at that?
Okay, so kind of 2 layers, right? Local services and to transit dependence. So this is different. ITP, the scope is very different from our transit agency's comprehensive operations analysis. I know AC Transit just approved their plan. So in transit agencies, so-called COA, they tend to look line by line, their BRT service, express, high-frequency network, and plus local services. The ITP is really focusing on that kind of coordination. It's not a replacement of the transit agency's service evaluation. So here you can see we don't show the local network because that's really for the transit agencies, for them to, they are responsible and they probably have ownership to that. On the second part, transit dependent, as I mentioned, equity is really the theme. When we look at the transit priority corridors, that's where we have transit dependent, our bread and butter transit passengers. Our recommendation would be, I believe, would serve our transit dependent population better because they have been the one, our transit passenger in the past, at present time, and as well as in the future. So they're never left out. And I welcome our transit partners to speak to that because they're on the ground. They know that their customers way better than I do.
I have other questions, but I feel like I've asked enough to start off, so I'm gonna.
Yeah, well done. Thank you for starting us off, and then we'll come back to you in a little bit. How about that? Okay, anybody want to jump in with that amazing start?
Actually, I have kind
Member
of a
Smith.
follow-up question, if I could. So, Leah, you had asked about, wanting to kind of see some of the details. You'll recall, I think in November, the meeting we had with the operator, that you had with the operators, you had some slides that showed some of those recommended improvements, such as transit-only lanes on YVR, Treat, San Pablo. I think it would be a good idea to actually bring that, if you could bring those slides up to share with the group, because those are, and I think most of the improvements are on routes of regional significance, which of course cross individual jurisdictional boundaries. And this is actually really an ideal group to review that sort of thing, given that this, the folks here, we have representatives from transit operators, cities, engineers, countywide, and local representation. I think that's kind of at its core one of the duties of this particular group. And so I think it would be a good idea to bring that information up, so that we could provide more thorough feedback.
Can you clarify what you mean by bring it up?
On the screen, share it with the group here. Because
I
I think
should
that's,
ask let me consult with our clerk about the procedure here.
I think also maybe one thing to mention is that we still wanted to vet all of that information with the transit agency general managers. So I think that it could be a subject of a future update to this group too.
okay, I would just want to highlight that the recommendations that were shown to the operators back in November are mostly pertaining to physical infrastructure, and of course that is all owned by the cities and the county.
For sure.
And the general managers for the transit operators aren't going to really have much say over that. And so and I know we've been asking for this to be shared, the operators, we've been asking for this in fairly strong terms to be shared with the cities for several months now. And so I am disappointed that those plans just are now being kept from this group. I think that's really an improper use of this group. And given the timeline that's been presented for when the final recommendations have to go forward, and this goes to the two CTA board as an example, I think the timing really comes into question for that, and should be done really before these recommendations are finalized.
Ying, do you have any comments to add to that?
Yeah, we have a few additional slides that gives us a zoom in. All right, here you go. Those are the more detailed slides. I just want to clarify, it's what we presented was like 24 slides. It's quite a bit of information. And that's why some of the details were not in your original package. So, but here you go. And the maps shows both the transit priority corridors in West County as well as the proposed shared mobility hubs. I'm going to go from, I think we have a few more slides to show here. And this is in the central county area. And southwest in the Tri-Valley area.
Do you have the slides that actually show the recommended improvements? These are just showing the TPCs and the hubs, which I think that does fall largely into the operator's purview, and I think we've kind of come to an agreement on that. But I'm thinking, like, for example, the bus-only red lines where you're converting, mixed flow traffic lanes on YVR and San Pablo to red bus-only
That's
lanes.
not something we have prepared for this meeting.
But you did
and
have it in November.
We do have it as a technical, the project oversight committee. So there is a CCTA staff had a discrepancy because we are talking about like technical staff looking at it, and we got a lot of feedback. And the team is looking at like redoing some of the work. So that's why we don't think those are appropriate for the TCC. This is a public meeting. We just think we just want to bring in with you something that we have a little bit more agreement on, rather than something that we, as you mentioned, there are many different input we heard among the transit operators. So we just think we just need to go back and redo the work and have more conversations.
Will that information be provided at the general manager's meeting that you have scheduled for, I think, later this month?
We are working on the materials for that meeting. That is scheduled for February 4th.
So then the physical infrastructure, which is significant, that would be occurring in city and county right-of-ways will be first presented to the general managers of the bus operators prior to actually being shared with those individual cities who would actually own and presumably maintain said infrastructure, and that would impact their individual roadway networks?
We haven't finalized our materials. So, I mean, like as I mentioned, if you would like to meet with us to talk about the recommendations in your city, will happen like as soon as schedule allows, right? But this is really overview the first time we come to you, and we just think this staff discretion, the level of details is appropriate. Granted, you may not agree with me, and I appreciate that input as well.
I just have to say, I feel like you're underestimating the ability of this group, because for many, many, many years, we've looked at draft technical information and provided guidance, and we don't typically receive final documents or almost final documents and get a summary view of something. We're a committee that's even formed subcommittees to look into these issues in detail. And so if this is just the introduction level, I would expect that there'd be several more opportunities to bring this before the TCC again and the RTPCs and the cities, but I'm also cognizant of this May deadline for finishing things up, and I'm not sure what's driving that deadline.
So I heard that you would appreciate detailed information. As I mentioned, obviously our project oversight committee, we don't quite have like close to consensus. That's why the information is not presented to you today. We are happy to, the team is working on the revision, so we really hope to get to consensus. And this is, I agree, we may not agree on the level of details and maybe fall short of your expectation, and I take that as a comment.
Thank you, Member Greenblatt and Smith. Appreciate your input.
Can I?
Yeah, but you
I feel
can I say one thing before you jump in, just really
Sure.
quick? So it sounds like what we're asking for here might be when you achieve your next level of consensus, even if it's not complete consensus on those designs, is there a possibility that we could look at them once that's done. And I know that that doesn't address what Member Smith was saying about presenting to the transit agencies before it goes to the cities, but I think that making an effort to share that with us once you've gotten to the point where you feel like you can move forward, that would be useful, and I think people here would like to see that. I think that's the gist of it, but maybe I'm wrong. So Member Smith, go right ahead.
I think what's important here is just looking at the staff report on the front page under recommendations. Staff will seek input on the action plan's elements and implementation, including transit priority projects, access improvements, and customer service, specifically on the recommendations that may have the greatest impacts on the jurisdiction's infrastructure. And yet, we can't see what these recommendations on the jurisdiction's infrastructure are. And so I've probably said enough. I think everybody in the room here kind of realizes what I'm getting at.
Chair, may I respond? And thanks
Go
for
ahead.
actually reminding me. Yes, there's commitment to come back to this committee with details. But CCC staff is not comfortable sharing something that we don't have a level of consensus with the transit agencies. So that's why rather than have in a public meeting, share something that we don't agree on, we really want to work hard on the agreement. So that's why we have been working on this for a long time, and first we'll focus on the service level, and we are coming back to you, and as soon as our, basically the work is being at a level that is presentable, or I think that's our judgment. And I think there are different ways we can go about this. At least at CCTA, we just wanted, when we come here, we want to have the support of our project oversight committee, mainly the actually 5 partners we have on the project. That's actually 5 bus agencies, because we include Livermore, Amador Valley Transit Agency, so plus MTC, those are the project partners. We really want to get to the consensus before we present to you at a public setting. But with individual cities, I think if there's interest to look at the detailed recommendations coming out from the project team, with the caveat that we may not quite have agreement from our transit partners, we're happy to go visit your office and share the details with you.
Can I just ask a question about that? How
Sure.
do individual cities request that meeting, and individual cities that are not part of the TCC in the county that may be impacted, how do they reach out to you?
I think I will, Chair, may I respond to the question?
Yes, go ahead, Ian.
Okay. After this meeting, I will ask Emily to share the project website, which is missing, as well as my contact information, and a reminder to reach out to set up those meetings.
Could the CCTA reach out to all the cities that may be impacted so they know how to reach out to you? Again, there's not representation from all the cities on the TCC. Or I guess the RPTC could be the conduit to the individual cities.
I think that's a really good point. Thanks for that
Yes.
suggestion.
Yes, and we have representatives of all the RTPCs here, so. Okay, has that point been made, I think? I think we're all in agreement that we know where we stand at this point. Let's look to see where we're moving next. Oh,
Can I
Member
just-
Fahey, go
I'm
ahead,
sorry,
throw your hat.
I think I want to just echo Andy. I'm a little concerned that you're reaching consensus with folks that don't own and operate these corridors, so you have no idea what's going on them. Like, City of Walnut Creek and County's working on Treat Boulevard right now, and you're talking about bus lanes on it. I think I saw San Pablo Dam Road, we're talking about a road diet on that on that road. So I think you're getting ahead of where you should be. So I think you should be meeting with the cities and the county now and showing what you're proposing, rather than, excuse me, reaching a consensus of what you think, and then you come to us and we throw a snag in that, and you're gonna have to backpedal. So I just,
Like, as I mentioned, we don't have to wait for the general managers workshop to meet with the cities. We could be meeting with you like not now at this moment, but as early as tomorrow, as long as our schedule allows. That's why we came to you the first meeting in 2025. We could be meeting with you as early as tomorrow. So I would definitely ask Emily to do me a favor, send out the message to you by the end of today, if that's possible. And we could be meeting as early as tomorrow.
Thank you, Member Fahey, and thank you, Ying. Did anybody else want to ask another question at this time? Okay, I had one personal question. Oh, wait, go ahead. Member McLean, sorry about that.
All right, I'm going to ask a question about something that was presented. So the 15 to 20 minute headways on these transit priority corridors, do we think that the 15 to 20 minutes frequency is enough to really balance out a lot of the significant changes that we're potentially proposing to really get people behind these transit improvements? So I'm just curious where the 15 to 20 came from, and if we should think about something shorter to really give that as a realistic choice for people who are going to move to transit.
I really appreciate a transit question. Yes, I think 15 minutes is for the transit priority corridors. The 15-minute network is really the gold standard. It's very expensive. So it is, our team, we actually debate this to death. We originally had a 10-minute recommendation. It's a balance of the reality, the funding reality, the budget reality versus what we really want to be. Yeah, if we can get it down to the headway 15 minutes or under, that's when we start to make an impact. And again, I don't want to be the only person answering the question. We have many transit experts in the room. So if you would like to jump in and help answer the question, I actually appreciate your support.
If anybody wants to jump in, support, go right ahead. Otherwise, it looks like.
Or explain the 15 to 20.
Okay, great. So we have two people with their hands raised. It looks like Member Stamps, you want to go? No? Okay. Who else wants to go here? I guess Member Boardman.
Okay, I'll go. Okay, sorry. Sorry, so follow up to that. So I think, did you mention that MTC is part of your oversight committee? Okay, and so their transit-oriented communities policy could result in an impact to, like, thinking about that 15 to 20 minute headway because of the definition based on like newer state laws that were passed and having those multiple routes. And so thinking about that impact to cities in terms of like rezone development, meeting all the land use like density standards, that kind of thing. How are you going to, I guess, address that with the cities, individual cities?
I think that would be a very interesting conversation. The reason why we recommend that is we're looking at current land use, population density, and the projected. And we think that's the level of transit service that makes sense to help us reach the transit first vision. And how that affects under, I believe, is state law 50, right? I'm a little bit behind with my land use information. That could have an impact on the city's land use and zoning. We didn't do that loop, we didn't do that analysis. I guess we operate under the assumption that higher level transit service is welcomed, is a benefit to the community. And I think maybe that would be feedback we may get when we meet with the individual cities, because in my prior job in a different county, I have heard some cities don't want the frequent service. I think that would be an interesting conversation if we get to that topic.
Member Greenblatt?
So I had a question for maybe AC Transit staff. Before the realign, which cuts service to San Pablo Avenue, what was the headway for the 72 Rapid and the 72 series?
I think we are around 7 to 8 minutes headways. I mean, I think 15 minutes is not really a gold standard. It's sort of it's like the upper limit where people just hate to wait. So the less you get it, the higher the frequency, the better. I mean, a good example are like the suburbs of Toronto, where there's 5-minute bus service everywhere, and their mode share is many times what it is in the East Bay. And it's just the expectation of the transit agencies and the public seem to be more meshed together. But in general, the more frequent you can do it, the better it is for the passengers. And also, I'll just add, like, if the transit priority treatments are robust enough, you can save time so that it's not just an endless addition of operating expenses to the transit agencies and the taxpayers. You can expand service sometimes in a cost-neutral way.
Thanks. So in West County, we're looking at doing some transit improvements along San Pablo Avenue. I don't know if we're ready to call it a BRT yet, but, Rapid Plus. And I think with 15-minute headways, that wouldn't probably justify the amount of expenditure that we'd be putting in. And I'd like to see something in here about, certain facilities may justify having shorter headways than 15 minutes.
Yeah, thank you for the input. I definitely, in the more detailed language, that we should add that into. It's more generic, because in some of the corridors, we're talking about 30 today. To go to 15 is actually very expensive. But I know in West County especially, probably the baseline is a bit different.
I can also add to that too, which is that in many cases, there are additional local routes that are using portions of these transit priority corridors that result in an effective, much higher frequency on certain segments, which is, and those are the segments where it may be easier to justify more infrastructure improvements. So we're taking a fine-grained look at that as well.
Okay, thank you. Member Pillai?
Just curious, CCTA is leading the county-wide smart signals project, and I feel that some of these corridors mentioned has an overlap with that project in terms of signal improvements. So how would your project address that? You're coming up with two separate projects with two separate improvements, but as an impact to the city, would it make sense for us to know what the plan is for the entire corridor, right? And if the improvements are getting implemented, and I echo the sentiments of everyone here, we don't know what is getting built, right? We don't know what the improvements are specifically, but when there are two separate projects which CCT is already currently leading, I think the cities should be given that information on what sort of improvements we can expect in those corridors. So when you are attending a countywide smart signal project, we are talking only about signals, right? We're not talking, of course, there is transit priority inputted in those signals, but if there is any additional improvements, we are not made aware. So that's something to be aware of.
Yeah, it's actually, appreciate the comment, because it's actually a good example explain how ITP supports or the role in the future capital project development. CCTA Smart Signal Project is a capital project. We're talking about design and build those signal improvements along those corridors. The ITP is a system-wide planning, actually a fiscally unconstrained study. It's really very visionary in a way. So the transit priority corridors, some of them do overlap with the smart signal corridors. Our team did review that. So actually, by the time the ITP is done this year, some of those smart signal corridors are probably well in their way to being designed and built. So and there's overlap, but the TPC may take a longer time to get to, say, the bus lanes. So the signal's done, that's good news, right? By, say, if we fast forward to 2027, the signal's been improved, but the rest of improvements haven't been done. So those improvements still have to roll into capital projects and seek funding. That the agency, CCTA or transit agency or the cities have to work together to seek funding to finish the rest of the improvements. So granted, they're two different projects, but they're really different nature, different types of projects. We are making sure we are not contradicting, but many of the improvements we're talking about, we are many million dollars away, many years away, many documents away from being done. This is really the beginning. So granted, there's a urgency to do everything, but I mean, the good news and bad news is any of the recommendations here will take many years for us to get there. So because it is a planning study, it's not a capital project.
Okay, thank you, Ying. Is there other questions of the committee? Member Smith?
Although I'll defer my questions to anybody else who wants to first ask, because I've taken a lot of time.
I'm in the same boat.
Okay, well, you guys are going to defer for a minute. Member Carnardi?
Just a couple like observations. So I'm not sure why these shared mobility hubs are even in a transit plan. It seems like the whole industry of shared mobility, scooters and bikes and such has had a big shakeout in recent years. So most of the users I see who are using electric scooters or bikes on BART or getting on the bus are using their own personal little vehicles. They're not using shared mobility things. And I'm wondering if this is something that was fashionable a few years ago when these companies like Lime were rolling out these things like across, in cities across the country. And now it's sort of shaken out. It's less important, although personal small vehicles like scooters and bikes are still critically important to the system, and whether those should be, maybe this is something that we don't need to do, and that if there is a need, that the private sector is able to provide the service. And the second comment is just, it's related to the slide here, which is on automation. So I think, having a call out for automated transit networks probably misses opportunities for automation or partial automations for fixed route buses or for micro transit. So if automation of the public transit system is going to be part of the plan, then I think it needs to be a little bit broader to look at technologies that can enable vehicles that use the roadways to be automated or partially automated.
Thank you. Did you want us to respond, or those are really something you would like us to put in as an input?
Yeah, sure, put it in. That was easy.
Member Armijo?
Just on the comment of the mobility hubs, I mean, Richmond does have a mobility hub, or it's could be defined that way. I think the concept is good. Whether it belongs in this plan or not, I don't know if I have a comment on that. But in concept, I think a mobility hub is a pretty sound way of addressing all the multimodal needs that cities have.
Any other comments at this time? Member Wertz?
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to bring up something that Member Greenblatt brought up a lot earlier in this conversation that I don't know if it ever really got addressed, and I don't know if you were going to ask more about it, Member Greenblatt, but just about the timing of this, and specifically the May deadline in terms of final recommendations. Just sort of wondering what the thought process was behind that and how flexible it is.
There is some flexibility in that. I think our constraints are budget, our consultant budget. We are really at the limit of how much we can afford. The longer time we take, because keep in mind, they start working on this since April. We have extended the deadline, their timeline, an added budget because there's additional scope that was requested by our stakeholders. So I think what we need to do is just we continue to engage all of you, all the stakeholders in this process. I don't think I mentioned a May deadline. There's a May, we have authority board meeting that we want to give them most of the recommendations. We have updated our board in the workshop format twice already. Our board received frequent updates. And so I just want to clear that misunderstanding. I never set a May deadline. If I did, I'm going to go back to that. That wasn't a May deadline, but there is this goal to finish the plan this year in July 2025. I think what is important for us to know is the regional measure that MTC is developing. Granted, there may not be a lot of opportunities for Contra Costa County to put in our projects because there's a lot of, the priority is to deal with the transfiscal cliff, but doesn't mean that there's a $0, right? We really need to advocate for our county, advocate for our projects. So that's the ITP is the planning foundation for us to submit transit capital projects and transit operating budgets in the regional measure. So that is what is driving the process. If we don't have a solid recommendation that can be supported by our board, it will be really difficult for CCTA to submit Contra Costa County's ask in the regional measure.
Does Member Greenblatt want to follow up with that?
Yes, and
go
it's
right
related
ahead.
to my other
Great.
question that I had. I'd like to request that, I guess, the committee asks CCTA staff to develop a schedule for us that lays out like when the upcoming RTPC TAC and board meetings are, and future TCC meetings are, and what like milestones would we be reviewing at each of those. Just so we have a better idea of the schedule and how do we get to that endpoint and make sure that everybody feels like they've had that opportunity for input and review. And I kind of see going like a band across the schedule is all these different meetings that you're also having with the cities, which clearly, you don't have dates and schedules for yet, but for all the RTPCs, those dates are known. Our TCC meeting dates are known, and I think sending that back to us, after this meeting would be helpful. So that's my request of our board.
Okay. And it sounds like a rational request. And I know on behalf of SWAT that we definitely would love to have presentations and an opportunity to give input. So we invite you to attend any SWAT meeting that you'd like to, and also TAC, and you do. Thank you for that. Does anybody want to, is there a process through which do we need to formally request that at this time? Are you comfortable producing some kind of schedule like this that we can work off of to see when we need to give input or can give input on the ideas that are being reviewed now but haven't been vetted completely but will be at some point? Is there a way that you can see providing something like that?
As I mentioned, I'm going to ask Emily to send you a follow-up email.
Okay.
And so either a city or RTPC, just please let us know, and we will have to fit it in. And just keep in mind all the transit agencies are represented. I among so many, I think that may be the most efficient way to go about it. For example, if WICTAC would like us to do a presentation at your next TAC meeting, give us a day, I'll talk to our team and see if we can just put our item on your agenda. So I think that may be the most efficient way. The next thing we know, we are at your TAC meeting and engage your cities to talk about the ITP.
Go ahead,
I
Member
think that
Greenblatt.
goes partially to what I'm asking for, but I want to make sure that we have the opportunity at the right point in your process to give you the feedback that we need. Like, it doesn't make sense to go to an RTPC meeting if you don't have the information that you're willing to share yet. So that's why I'm asking for maybe it's your consultant, I'm sure you guys have a schedule, but kind of digging a little deeper on that schedule, maybe it's already there, but figuring out, okay, well, the TAC meetings are here, the TCC meetings are here, this is when we're gonna have this information, so it makes sense to go to these meetings in this time frame. I mean, I think you could assume, I don't know, that all the RTPCs might be interested in this.
Yes.
So you can just take the schedules that are out there and plug them into your existing schedule and your milestones, and where you have, work products that you're seeking feedback on, that's when you would schedule your input. And then you get a sense of, are you going to be able to make it to July? How do you schedule all those meetings and get to your endpoint?
Yeah, we have an engagement plan, and we do have to modify it to just because the challenges and the topics, right? Granted, in the first year, we're talking about transit frequency, and I know many of you, I don't want to assume, but may not be of interest to all of you. I think it's safe to say that. But now we'll talk about capital improvements on your local streets, and that is obviously that generate more interest. So we can go back and revise our plan and fill in more details. So and any in your, I think Leah may be more helpful if we just talk offline, because with WICTAC in West County, there's a lot of overlap. Yesterday, for example, WICTAC staff came to our board meeting to present an update on Richmond Parkway. And there's quite a bit of overlap with the TPCs. So I will be talking to your executive director very soon on several efforts that we overlap, not only me, but other CCTA staff. So maybe that will be more valuable to WICTAC and West County when we talk about not just the ITP, but other concurrent studies that you are working on, or WICTAC and CCT are working on together. So hopefully that satisfies your question. And okay, I'm sorry to hear that, but we will do our best and try again at a future date.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
So I do have some questions, but I feel I have to say something here. I've been, for the most part, I've been working here in planning and transportation planning in Central County for about 20 years now, and I've been working with 2CTA that long as well, back when you were in the old offices on Buskirk. And one thing that I've noticed is that there's been a very consistent approach to planning and projects by 2CTA involving the RTPCs, the various committees, really a very strong effort to vet and to collaborate with the partner jurisdictions and to be, open and actually provide something meaningful to respond to. And, I know that the transit operators, we've been asking in very strong terms for many months now that this project be actually brought forward to the affected, jurisdictions in a very meaningful way. I've heard multiple voices here today asking for this to happen, for a schedule, for, hey, we want, there needs to be collaboration and input. This project has definitely not followed the standard method of operation by 2CTA that's been well established for decades now. And what I keep hearing is, well, if you want to be involved, come to us, rather than 2CTA proactively going out and asking to be put on the agenda for the RTPCs, for the tax and the boards, as I will say always happens, going out to, all the groups and asking, rather than, well, if they want to talk to us, they'll come to us. And when we ask for some meaningful, useful information, it's not hearing a lot of yes. I'm hearing a lot of basically no and kind of diverting. And so I have to say that I'm very disappointed to see that that's the approach and the responses, at least to my ears, that I'm hearing again today. I do have some questions. You know, this in reading and, you know, both what's presented today at previous meetings, it seems like this plan is really predicated on a strong, fast, frequent bus trunk network. And then, but then there does definitely appear to me to be a very strong focus on first and last mile and emerging technologies being that first and last mile. You know, the Glideways thing that's shown here, for example, the AV flying taxis that were shown on slide 13. And those things have, especially the Glideways, you know, the ATN stuff, has a tremendous upfront infrastructure requirement. If you're going to have fixed guideway automated transit, well, you got to build that fixed guideway. And as we, I think, all know, transit service is kind of hanging by a thread right now. I mean, you know, the fiscal cliff is real. I have kind of, you know, low hopes that a regional measure is really going to go through and save the day. You know, at least for County Connection, it's pretty good if we're able to provide half-hour service frequencies, headways. And nobody's going to take a flying taxi or a microtransit or a whatever to a bus that only comes once every half hour if they're lucky. And so I'd like to know, does this plan, or is it the intent of 2CTA staff that this plan, you know, will the infrastructure, all that money, millions and millions and millions of dollars on infrastructure, be sought after and spent prior to getting kind of the financial house in order for operations? I mean, I can tell you that we would see a lot more ridership if we just had more frequent buses, and we don't actually have to build a whole lot of infrastructure for that. But none of this is going to work without that, as it's being presented. And so, you know, I hear like, oh, you know, the 2CTA wants to bring this, you know, be able to use this as an opportunity to kind of get our bit in on the regional measure. You know, what percentage do you see? You know, how much of the funding needs of this plan do you anticipate being infrastructure versus operations?
I think what we submit to the regional measure is actually not up to the ITP team to decide. It's really our board's decision. How much is infrastructure versus operation? It depends on what MTC allows us, right? There are many versions of the regional measures. Sometimes there's $0 for operations. That's not necessarily CCTA's choice, right? They say, okay, you have X dollars for infrastructure. What projects you want to put in, right? So I would say the tie to regional measure is we need to do our best, and there isn't a breakdown of operating versus infrastructure. We already defined the frequent, the TPC and the frequent network, plus other operational costs in the shared mobility hubs. Those are operating. So we will need to work on the cost estimate, and capital is also capital. Member Smith, I think your question is quite comprehensive. I think that's one part of your question. The other part is the bus service versus the automated, and that's something we still need to debate. And I think all solutions have a place, right? If we ask us individually, some people may favor the flying car, and some people really just think the 40-foot or 60-foot bus in the frequent network is most productive. I think we can all hold on to our opinion, but the plan has worked through the process to get different input. That's why there are all solutions, we have so many different solutions in the toolbox. And granted, sometimes those solutions may compete for funding. That's the reality of it. We don't see it, we're not at the point to say what project can make the cut into the regional measure, what projects can make the cut into the local sales tax renewal. We're not at that point yet. And that's really up to our board to make that decision with all of your input. The ITP is really to make the recommendations, what makes sense, what benefits those improvements will bring in. So that's kind of your second question. Chair, with your permission, I do want to respond to Member Smith's first comment about the process.
No, of course, please do.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that your interpretation is like CCT staff says that just you come to me. I think what we're saying that my email to you follow-up is for you to express your interest, and we are happy to set up time to the RTPC, either at the staff level or at your TAC level, and with individual cities or city grouping, right? If 2-3 cities, they are interested in talking to us together because the corridor runs through, say, those 2 cities. We're happy with that. We're flexible with the format. So since I have the mic, yes, we want to go to you, to your city, to your RTPC office, and we are not telling you to come to us.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Hopefully we got some questions answered there. And I know as your earlier offer to come to a city, I would like to take advantage of that too for San Ramon at some point. Especially with the CTP presentation we had at the last meeting, it was super interesting to see the plans for that, placemaking and designations of specific roads being places themselves, places of regional significance, and there was some confusion as to why our main trunk route wasn't picked for that. And so it would be neat to have someone come talk to our team here at the city and overlay the CTP on top of this plan and talk a little bit about what the ideas are for San Ramon specifically. I think that would be very fruitful for our engineers and planners to learn more about what the vision is and the implications for San Ramon specifically. So thank you for being open to doing that. And, it's intriguing to me to be in this committee. I haven't been here very long, but to see how these kind of puzzle pieces have been laid before us. And, I come from the old days of graphic design when there was these kind of overlays where you can just kind of flip down a map over the top of it, see it instantly, and you don't really have that on paper, and there isn't quite something like that online now that's simple to use, at least that I've found. If anybody has a recommendation, let me know. But I think that is the next step for us understanding what, as a city, we're going to be doing soon, because there's a lot of stuff planned for San Ramon, and it'd be great to make sure that all the pieces connect. So, not a real question, but like a request to be included on that list, and we'll send you an email and say, hey, we'd love to be part of this. And that's the main reason why I want to do it. I think that, as Member Smith said, I think that you guys have done a great job in the past in reaching out to RTPCs, and I don't think that, I haven't noticed any deviation from that. I just feel like now that's the next step, and we're at the threshold of moving on to the next step, and so we'd like to do that. So that's the gist of my comment. Thanks.
Thank you. I heard 2 invitations, and yes, we'll follow up.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions in the group?
I would like to ask.
Member Smith.
Is it possible for us to, I'd like to basically, with the help of Member Greenblatt, make a motion formally, putting TCC on as a formal request for that schedule that you had proposed to be brought back to the next TCC meeting. I would need your help in actually crafting that motion, because you could say it better than I could because you first said it.
Well, before you embark on
if we
that,
could do that,
just to make sure that we're moving in a direction that's not impossible. I mean, do you think some kind of schedule like that is something that could be produced in time before our next meeting? And there'd be something substantial to be able to present if we make that request, or would it just kind of lead to frustration on everybody's part? Sorry, to ask that quick question. I want to take the steam out of what you're saying here. I just want to clarify that.
Fair question.
Go ahead, Yang.
There's a procedure question and for our clerk.
Oh, okay. Go ahead and ask.
I was just going to note that you don't have to make a motion in order to do that. You can simply make a request and then work with Yang.
I do think, though, that it is, particularly in this case, it would be important to know if this committee is, all of its members are making that request, as opposed to just, one particular member or two particular members. And so I really would actually like to take that formal step.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds like something we could do. And I'm not the arbiter of process here, but I can definitely move forward in any way we would like to do this. Shall we do it with a vote? Or should we have a motion with a description of what we're voting on here first before we start rolling?
Yeah, so you would have to go ahead and make the motion and be clear about what you're asking for. And then, of course, the first and the second, and then we'll have to do a roll call vote.
Okay. Member Greenblatt, you were invited to take the lead on this by Member Smith. If you are interested in giving it a shot, I think we'd all be grateful. Thanks.
I am open to assistance on this because I'm trying to craft as we go, but I'd like to move that we request that staff develop a schedule with the upcoming meetings of the RTPCs, their boards, their TACs, as well as the TCC, and that corresponds with the milestones that we're reviewing or being asked to review. Does that cover it?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion. Emily, did we take some notes there to get all those subgroups?
Yep, we have it, and it is being recorded, so we'll be accurate.
Okay.
And
Okay, so I'll do,
did you mention by the next meeting?
By the next meeting.
we'll add that to what has been recorded. How about that? Okay, well, the gist of it is that we would like a schedule, and we're going to be voting on this now, that we'd like a schedule by the next meeting that includes the boards, TCCs, RTPCs, scheduled meetings coming up, and is it decision points marked there also, or is it just a schedule of those meetings and then the points at which these groups can give comments on specific matters?
Yes.
Okay, I think it's the second one then.
And I
Okay,
would second that as well.
whoever's transcribing this, sorry.
Can I add something to the motion?
Member Fahey?
That we see some plans with that schedule.
Staff would like to ask for clarification on plans.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to try to clarify? Yes.
I mean,
Member
what
Fahey.
you're planning on these corridors. I mean, you're calling out bus lanes on, I don't even know which roads because I didn't see them. But I'm guessing, I heard Member Smith mention Ignacio Valley and Treat specifically. What are you proposing on those roads? Any road you're proposing any work on?
I think,
So I think what you're asking for, Member Fahey, is that that this calendar, the schedule, as part of the milestones that are being listed in there and when those would be reviewed, that those milestones specifically include at some point, and including coming back to this committee, plans for what is, actually going to be in this plan, the improvements that are being proposed.
And maybe
Yes,
just
thank you.
as they're made, and maybe just as they're available, because I don't know if, and maybe Ian could answer this better, I'd be surprised if they were all available by the next meeting. So I think it would be, we have to give flexibility for as they're approved.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess to me, don't go to the RTPCs without the plans.
so I,
Figure out when your plans are going to be ready,
That's
then
the
start
plan of
scheduling your RTPCs.
I-
Don't go to SWAT next week and give this same presentation and nobody sees anything.
Okay, that's
That's the
clear.
intent behind the idea of the schedule, is that then you can go to the appropriate committees with the information.
Okay. So Ying, does that make a little more sense? some clarity there, but there's a little murky too,
I
so.
think there's clarity and there's also misunderstanding, the potential misunderstanding of the product, right? I know we're among planners, transit agency folks, and engineers. When we say plans, we really mean different things. That's why I pull up this slide. The ITP is not going to produce like a 15% design or any level of design. So I don't want to assume whether you're an engineer or not, but sometimes when I work with engineers, when they say plans, they say, okay, whether the transit lane, how wide, what is the separation, that's not what the ITP is going to produce. So when member Farley mentioned plans, I get a bit nervous because we cannot show you something we're not going to produce per the scope of the ITP. So I just, anyways, that's why I asked for clarification, so
Yes.
we don't all, you all agree to vote on the word plans, while we all leave this room with different understandings, and that would just cause additional confusion.
Right.
Can I just, like,
Yes,
for
Member Morgan.
clarification as a plan engineer, hopefully representative here, I think, because, well, I'm just going to use Ignacio Valley Road, let's be real, as an example, because I work for Walnut Creek. You could build like a above ground structure and do like a fully separated BRT if you wanted to on long Ignacio Valley Road, but that's going to cost $1 bajillion. So I think what we're asking for is like, what is the feasible, types of improvements that you're just, thinking about? You've obviously been thinking about this. That's why you identified these corridors. So is it like change out a lane to dedicate it as a bus lane? That's how you're going to get those high level costs, right? So I think that maybe, hopefully, Jerry, I captured that. So I think that would be of great interest to the different jurisdictions to just get a higher level sense of like, what were you thinking about with these corridors?
Since I do know what our team is producing, and then we're still debating how much. For example, the design team has talked about center running versus side running BRT. And after the meeting with our POC, we think to go into so specific center running versus side running, that's too specific for the system-wide county level study. So instead, we think we can get to like roughly say 50% will be dedicated lane. So not to go into the technical details, if we can modify the work plans to deliverables, I think that would be something that we can work on, because deliverables is really the control of the project team per the scope to get to when you want to define our deliverables. That's when I know we cannot meet your needs.
Member Greenblatt?
I am fine with deliverables, the use of that term, because I think not only does that cover plans or whatever maps, schematics, but it also covers like policies and maybe project lists. I'd like to see when we get to comment on the various work products. And I don't know what all the work products are. That's why you got to develop the schedule, so we'll know when to expect it. So I'm good with that.
Okay, so
For my motion.
are you comfortable with that? Was it Member Fahey that mentioned that earlier, changing the word plans to deliverables to make this more accessible and attainable?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I ask a
Oh,
process
go right ahead,
question?
McLean. Member McLean.
So I don't know that we've ever created a motion and set deliverables and deadlines as a motion as part of this committee. So I'm a little concerned that we're diving into a setting a motion and voting on something that we wouldn't typically do. We've given a lot of feedback. I understand there's a lot of frustration, but I'm not sure what precedent we're setting here. Just my thoughts.
No, appreciate your input and worth thinking about. Everybody's thinking, I can hear it. Does any other members want to give input here at this time?
I'll just
Member
say,
Rainbow?
why I'm comfortable with this is we've heard that this effort is on a fast track. And I don't want to be the committee that holds up the work. So, you know, I'm not asking for the deliverables by next meeting. All I'm asking for is a schedule that says, when are you going to come back and check in with us? Maybe they will have deliverables at our next meeting. Great. But I don't know. I've sat on this committee actually longer than Andy, I think. A long time I've been working with the CCTA. So I don't have an issue with the precedent part of this. I feel like we're just trying to work with the level of progress that they're seeking.
Okay, any other input on this item, whether we're going to move forward with these? We already have a motion, so we're going to vote. Anybody want to say anything before we do this vote? Okay.
Can we
Emily?
first, sorry.
Oh, wait, Member Pillai, sorry.
Just, going by the slide, right, it says transit priority corridors and transit capital improvement projects generally identified with high-level costs, right? So you are in the process of identifying capital improvement projects, but cities have not been involved in it at all, right? So I think that's a concern everybody is feeling, because at this point, we are not in a position to comment without knowing what the improvements are. So I believe the improvement projects were identified in cooperation with the transit operators, but where is the city's role in all of this, right? I mean, is there any right-of-way take? What are the implications for the businesses around? So at this point, I think the concern here is we cannot provide any comments without knowing what the plan is. I feel, the idea is good. There is mobility hubs, there is transit priority corridors, but unfortunately, nobody's in a position to comment without knowing what the plan is, right? Am I right?
Thank you, Vice Chair Pillai. Okay, so Emily, I think we are ready to vote.
Yes, so first, Chair, I would like to, there's a lot of, I would like one final motion for the record. That was a lot of good discussion there, so I'd like to make sure that we get that correct.
Hopefully. I'm not known for my memory. So I move that this committee requests that staff develop a schedule that includes the meeting dates of the RTPC tax and board and the TCC, along with the desired, along with the work products that, the corresponding work products that would be under review. Did that work?
I would still second that.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you. And then Chair, do you mind calling for public comments as well?
Sure. At this time, we would like to take some public comments. If anyone would like to speak from the public, please submit a speaker card or raise your virtual hand, and staff or I will call upon you. Do we have any public comment at this time?
Thank you, we do not have any public comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion. We have a creative description, and we'll see if we can
Oh, by the
get
next
everyone.
meeting, right?
Yes, and I would second that as well.
Yes.
Okay, so we just added one last thing there, transcriber, I saw, sorry. Okay, so do you want to lead the vote, Emily?
Member Armijo?
Yes.
Member Boardman?
Yes.
Member Chen?
Yes.
Member Conrady?
Yes.
Member Diaz?
Yes.
Member Fahey?
Yes.
Golier, yes?
I will get it right for the next meeting. Thank you. Member Greenblatt?
Yes.
Member McLean?
Yes.
Member Ortiz? Thank you.
Yes.
Member Smith?
Yes.
Member Stamps?
Yes.
Member Wertz?
Yes.
Vice Chair Pillai?
Yes.
Chair Weeks?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously by members Doe, Levine, LeBeau, Nelson, Panganiban, and Rohani absent.
All right, thank you, everybody. That was, appreciate you sitting and listening to all of our concerns, Ying, and doing your best to provide what we're looking for there. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Okay, that gives us to other business. I don't think we have any today. So that brings us to adjournment. So I get to hit the hammer. Adjourned.